Well, team, after over a year of being off the water, we're back. Climate Kayaking Conversation is back on the water, and we are going to be trying to go the rest of the way up from where we started up to Norfolk, Virginia. We're starting out here in Titusville, Florida, and we've got 3 months to go, 800 miles, and one heck of an adventure. So I hope you will continue to follow along as we explore the Intracoastal Waterway of the southeastern United States, meet some really interesting people, and I hope we might learn a thing or two along the way. So, you want to come along for an adventure? Let's go. Well, we made it to the end of day one, and that feels pretty good, I think. Mentally, I'm feeling pretty good. It's taking some time to get back into the rhythm of things, I will say that. But now we're fed, relatively packed up, and I'm gonna try and stay as far away from the inside of this island as possible because the mosquitoes are so bad. It's not terrible here on the beach. Back on the island here, it's horrible. But you know, there's a reason they call it Mosquito Lagoon. Sometimes I wonder if this project's even worth it. If anyone's even gonna take anything away from it, what I said it was gonna be. But anytime anyone sees the boat or runs into me and I talk about the boat and the project, they seem encouraged. So hoping that something like this can continue, but you know, there's always that imposter syndrome sitting in the back of my mind that there's something or someone way better qualified to be doing than me, sitting on a beach and thinking I know what I'm doing, when obviously, you know, in my mind, I have no idea what I'm doing, but there's enough people that think I know what I'm doing to support me. That's gotta be something. So, peace out and I'll see you tomorrow. Actually, I'm gonna try to come in starboard side here.
You think you can do a side?
Yep.
Actually,
I'm 16 feet long, so.
you can get her sideways.
Yeah.
Just because I got a boat coming in here later.
No worries. Yeah. So this thing actually turns pretty quick on a dime, so.
Yeah, I saw that.
Not your typical boat you have a come in a marina like
No.
this.
Every now and then, like every couple of years. So. And coming from?
Originally, well, the boat's from North Carolina, but I last put in. Well, my original starting point was Miami, and then the pandemic hit, so I had to pull out of the water in Titusville. I'm trying to go all the way to Norfolk.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Here, I got the line for you.
Gotcha. Good luck.
There we go.
I think. Okay, and here's your boat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But it's a documentary to talk to people about how the coast has changed over time.
Oh, sweet. Awesome. Even inland coast? Or the waterways?
This is kind of whole coastal community.
Yeah.
As a way to.
Only thing we'll need is slack your valve.
Yep.
It happens when I'm guiding out on the water. That conversation comes up anyway all the time now, and I don't sway anybody towards or my customers into contributing perhaps or anything like that. I think they see it firsthand and they understand immediately what I'm talking about and where I'm coming from, because well, when I'm out there in areas, acreages that we're poling over, because I'm using water only about that deep, where the grasses used to thrive and just it was magnificent actually, and gin clear water. So now when I'm over those same bodies of water, now it's kind of an off yellowish type color, greenish sometimes, and it's just all barren sand bottom. So and they understand immediately where I'm coming from. We do still see fish, of course, or I wouldn't be doing it anymore, but the numbers are way down, and if we can't figure out what's going on and bring it back to the state that it was in, I think we're going to lose this world-class fishery that we once had.
So having had all this time from the first leg of the trip to the second leg where we are now, I'm really going to try to make a little bit of higher quality content for you all for each of these videos. So yes, they're going to continue to be the adventure side of this project. Don't worry about that. But on top of that, I'm going to do my best to also try and implement a little bit of tidbits of information about the project, about boating, or anything like that along the way. So thank you all so much for following along. Let's continue on. So I'm here in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, which has been super great. It's been so much fun to meet with local artists and local breweries and all sorts of fun, awesome people here in New Smyrna Beach, Florida. But I think there's a topic we need to talk about that I feel like some of you are not grasping. That's tides. So we all generally know about tides. The water goes up and down with the moon, it's a bunch of other things, but generally there is 2 high tides and 2 low tides throughout the day. However, the big difference comes from when we have different levels of tides, because the difference between low tide and high tide in different parts of the country can vary drastically. So, let me tell you what I mean. Now, when I'm talking about tides, and particularly the height of tides, it's really important to think about where you are. So, where I am here down in Florida, there is not that much variation tide. So that the difference between low tide and high tide is only about a foot. Compare that where I'm from in North Carolina, the tide is anywhere from 3 feet to 5 feet between the tides. But then you get to a weird place in Georgia that Florida, okay, a foot average, North Carolina 3 to 5 feet, so you would think it starts increasing as you go north, which it does. However, in Georgia, it is its own little world, because if you imagine the United States as a map, so all the way up at my finger here is going to be North Carolina, then South Carolina. Georgia's right in the middle of between my fingers and thumbs, and then my thumb is down here in Florida. So down in the middle here is what we call the Georgia Bight, and where that is all of the water from North Carolina to Florida flows into that Georgia Bight area, which means that there is a ton of water moving in that direction, which then means that there is a significant difference between low tide and high tide in the Georgia area. And so you end up in some Georgia areas with low tide and high tide difference of almost 9 feet, if not even higher during a king tide, which is stars aligning, an even bigger tide. I'll link to another video that explains it better. That could be upwards of 11 feet. So, tides can be huge, but they can also be very small. Check your tides where you're going. Don't just base your tides off of where you're from, because they can vary greatly. So thinking about our whole tide situation, think about the water as just a giant bowl or a giant balloon of water. And so the tides are mainly controlled by the moon, and the moon has this gravitational pull on the earth. So think of the moon as wherever it is squeezing the balloon out to look more like an egg or an oval rather than a sphere. As it makes its lap around the planet every day, it then pulls at one side of the planet and then the other. That's how we get our 2 high tides, and then on the other 2 ends are 2 low tides. But it's not a perfect lap around like that, as well as it doesn't perfectly go around the earth every single day. So we end up with a slight variation on our tides. And so the tide might shift forward a few minutes every day, or maybe even upwards of an hour every day, depending on your location. And then you'll get a even bigger tide on what they would call a spring tide. So that's when the sun and the moon line up together. That's when you get an extra high tide, and that usually happens around the full moon and new moon of every month. So I encourage you, next time you go to any kind of coastal waterway, whether it's on the Intracoastal Waterway or even out at the beach, keep an eye on the water level throughout the day. And you might even be able to take a look up at the moon and see which position the moon is in. You can then start to piece it all together of when your high tides are, when your low tides are, and the difference between your high tide and low tide. Because especially if you're on the water, kayaking, boating, sailing, whatever it is, it's really important to understand that so that you can plan to be safe on the water, as well as so you don't have to work as hard, so you're not fighting the tide. So we have a slight change of plans today. That it might look beautiful right now, but let me tell you, it's going to be worse later today.
Well, this is our first real experience with a lot of rain. It started last night, and it's been on and off since then, and it's gonna keep going like this for the next 4 days. There might even be calling for hail tomorrow. So, we're gonna continue to monitor things, and we're gonna play it safe. And that if we have to take up extra time here, we're then just gonna wait for good conditions and then make up time when we can, because there's no sense in making a bad decision. There's no real official timeline, there's no deadlines for this, so be smart, work smart, and don't make a stupid decision.
Well, good morning, everyone. As you can see, it is not raining. Not raining is very good. So we are actually going to try and skirt up to our next marina, up to Halifax Marina, which is up in Daytona Beach. It's about 15 miles, and it's going to be cutting it pretty close with the weather. But if I stay here another day, we're going to be socked in for another 2 days. So it's either I go today or I go in 3 days. We got to keep moving. I cannot tell you how amazing it's been to be here in New Smyrna Beach. I've met some amazing people, heard some amazing stories, and really helping progress this project, because the whole idea around this project is talking with people in coastal communities to talk with them about how climate change is affecting them personally, because climate change has become this big overarching topic that is really hard to grasp at. So if we're able to kind of hit at the smaller points, the individual things that climate change might be affecting, that might be a better way to start to break down some barriers and make some connections with people. And I'm really starting to feel that. So we need to keep moving on, find more stories, find more communities, and just meet some more people. But let's continue on here. I'm gonna get this boat packed up. Let's get back out on the water. And we are officially back out on the water, leaving New Smyrna Beach. And we have a very small window here to try and squeak up to Halifax Marina, about 15 nautical miles. In terms of conditions, it's fairly overcast, as you can see. Not that much wind blowing, but I think we're gonna have the tide with us. And we're just gonna have to pump away. I'm gonna go ahead and leave things here for this week. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you so much for following along and watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, go ahead and give that thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so that I can continue to share this adventure with all of you. Tune in for next video. Haven't entirely figured out what we're gonna talk about yet, but I definitely want to continue to do these kinds of topics on top of this travel. So big takeaway from this video, the more you know about tides, the safer you can be on the water, and the more fun you can have as well. But thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you out on the water.